Hi, this is strictly legal.
Law of temporary injunction and the Code of Civil Procedure. In this video, we'll deal with the law of temporary injunctions. The detailed blog on this topic has already been published on strictlylegal.in. The link of this blog will be on the description of this video. If you prefer reading, then watching. Uh, so, let's get to the meaning of temporary injunction. Temporary injunction refers to the judicial intervention of maintaining a status quo that is an existing condition of thing applied by either of the parties as an interim relief during the pendency of the proceedings of a case. Now, what this means is when there is a disputed property or a suit property and a person is moving the court seeking an order of temporary injunction, it only means that the person wants the current existing condition of the disputed property or the suit property to be maintained in its current position. That is, the status quo must be maintained. The suit property must not be tampered with. For example, the suit property cannot be sold, or the name cannot be transferred, or any construction, of similar nature cannot be taken place if an order of temporary injunction is granted. Now, it is in the nature of protective relief granted, keeping in mind the rights of both the parties to prevent a future irreparable injury. Now, what is irreparable injury or irreparable harm? We'll study that in the later part of this video. Now, let's come to in what cases can temporary injunction be issued. Order 39 of the Code of Civil Procedure 1908 lays down the provisions regarding the temporary injunctions that applies to cases of civil nature. However, the general principle of Order 39 CPC applies to laws such as electricity, matrimonial, tenancy, writs, and PILs. This list is indicative and not exhaustive. Now, you must be thinking that what is the difference between an order of stay and an order of injunction? In simple terms, an order of stay is issued against a court, whereas an order of injunction is issued against a party. A stay is an order restricting, prohibiting, or suspension of judicial proceedings or a court from doing something. It is an order issued by a higher court to a lower court, whereas an order of injunction restricts or prohibits or requires a person to do something or not do something. Uh, an order of stay is issued to a court, but an order of injunction is issued to a party, as I said. Um, one Also, there's one major difference that has been laid down is Mulraj versus Rahajunathi Maharaj is that an order of stay becomes effective only when it is communicated to the court to which it is issued, but an order of injunction becomes effective as soon as it is issued. Can injunction be issued against a court? The simple answer is again no. An injunction is an act in personam and not an act in rem, and it cannot be issued against a court. This is a view of Halsbury law of England, but this view was also supported by the Indian courts in the case of Food Corporation of India versus Sukhdev Prasad. To be specific, temporary injunction is granted under CPC, cannot be issued against a court. A temporary injunction may be granted against a party to the suit and in some circumstances against any person for whom a right of action exists. Now, what are the grounds for injunction? Order 39 Rule 1 enumerates several grounds for which an order of injunction may be issued. However, the use of may be granted indicates that the list is not exhaustive, that it is not an endless list. It is only indicative, and the courts are have been given the liberty uh, to judge cases as to what needs injunction and what does not need injunction. The temporary injunction under CPC may be granted on the following conditions: where a property in dispute exists and there lies a risk that it will be damaged, wasted, or alienated by any party to the suit or be sold in execution of a decree; where a defendant intends to or threatens to dispose of or sell the property to defraud its creditors; where the defendant is about to commit a breach of contract, where the defendant threatens to dispose of the property or cause injury to the plaintiff in relation to a property in dispute in the suit; where the court is of the opinion that a just and equitable ground exists. As I said, the court has been given enough liberty to choose what may be the causes for grant of temporary injunction. That brings us to a question: how does the court chooses? um, the court has this triple test for injunction. The power of to grant injunction is not limited to the text of law, but it is guided by the discretionary powers of the court. However, the discretion must be exercised with due regard to the justice, equity, and good conscience. In other words, discretion must be founded on the basis of reasonableness and sound legal principles. Now, the Indian courts have had this principle through which they test reasonableness of an application for injunction. The triple test, uh, the triple test for injunction. The first one is if the plaintiff has a prima facie case, without examining the merits of the case closely, but on considering matters on the face of it, whether there is a bona fide cause, and if there is an arguable case before the court must decide. The burden is on the plaintiff to convince the court that there is a prima facie case by furnishing sufficient evidence or otherwise in this favor. The second thing is if there is an irreparable harm foreseen. Now, we learn about what is an irreparable harm. The applicant must further satisfy the court that there is a possibility of irreparable harm to him, and that if an order of temporary injunction is not issued, will injure him. Irreparable harm may refer to the damage that may not be possible to be compensated in pecuniary terms. Pecuniary means monetary terms. In American Cyanamid Company versus Ethicon Limited, 1975, the court has rightly pronounced that the principle of irreparable harm as follows. If the damage in a measure recoverable at common law would be adequate remedy and the defendant would be in a financial position to pay them, no interlocutory injunction should normally be granted. However, the strong the plaintiff's claim appear to be at that stage. Interlocutory refers to interim reliefs. Now, if on the other hand damages would not provide an adequate remedy for the plaintiff in event of it succeeding at a trial, the court should then consider it as irreparable harm. Now, it must be noted that the expression irreparable harm does not mean that there should be there should be no possibility of repairing on an injury. It only means that exist no specific or fixed pecuniary standards for measuring damages. That is, in simple terms, if I have to explain this, it is if there is a measure on which the damage could be if there is a if there is a fixed standard on which the damage could be measured in monetary terms, then it is not irreparable injury. If the damage cannot be measured in monetary terms, it is irreparable injury. Now that brings us to the third test of the triple test. It is if there is a balance of inconvenience. The balance of inconvenience must be in the favor of the applicant. Before granting an order of injunction, the court must be satisfied that the mischief, hardship, or the inconvenience which is likely to be caused on refusal to the plaintiff is greater than which is likely to be caused to the opposite party by granting it. This is simply for the courts to decide. Now, how long does a temporary injunction last? The validity of temporary injunction depends on the type of injunction granted. For example, if injunction is granted as pendant light, it will be valid till the proceedings of the case. Whereas, if it's in a temporary injunction made by a court is made perpetual or permanent as a part of the decree passed by the court. Now, this will depend from case to case. For more information on this, you'll have to read that particular judgment of the case or the order that relates to temporary injunction of that specific case. Now, a format of application for temporary injunction is on the screen. This is what temporary injunction looks like. Thank you for watching strictlylegal.in.